welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like it if you do need like it, and let's get straight into it. So, sorry first of all if my voice sounds that all rough throughout going through this. I'm gonna try my best, a little bit ill, but to start off, I'm gonna start off with the boxing news as per usual. So, Lomachenko versus Kambosos Jr. is set for April 13th in Australia. I think that's a great fight, and I'm glad it's being made. And yet again, Lomachenko being in another big fight, and like I said, I'm glad it's getting made. And respect to Lomachenko for yet again going into somebody else's backyard, that being Australia this time. And so hopefully it will all get made and everything will be done for that of April 13th. Top Rank have won purse bids for Ford versus Kolmatov. Wilson will fight December 15th. Cruz is set to fight Straffen December 9th. Dubois will fight February 3rd. IBF have ordered purse bids for Rakimov versus Nunes. Johnson will fight December 8th. Azim is set to fight Paulson February 3rd. Arum wants Taylor to fight Pacquiao. I think that's a very strange fight, one that definitely doesn't need to be made. I don't really know what's going on with Pacquiao. He is constantly rumoured with different fights. I mean, I don't even know if he's still going to the Olympics or not. But I don't really know what's going on. But I don't think that fight is the one that needs to be made for Taylor, to be honest. The BBOFC have rejected Ben's appeal or application to fight Eubank Jr. in the UK. So that's interesting news. That's big news because of how much Eddie Hearn has been expecting this fight to go through and to go ahead and to be happening in the UK, and how much he's been saying that it was pretty much done and it was going to happen. For the BBOFC to go and do this is interesting, and fair play to an extent for them to kind of stick into their morals and not really get bullied by maybe the money and stuff like that. I'm sure that there was possible money implications involved. Not saying there was certainly, but there might have been. But either way, now it's going to be interesting to see if they still make the fight or if they put the fight somewhere else or what. I don't really know, but it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with that now. KSI will spar Speed December 15th. Thought I would add that in, although it is a bit random. Butler is set to fight Harris February 24th. The winner of Joshua versus Wilder could be made mandatory for a world title. Haney has vacated all his lightweight world titles. Davis is set to be upgraded to WBA lightweight world champion as a result of Haney vacating all the belts. And I mean, he deserves to be a world champion. I know that Davis said himself that he doesn't want to get it this way, but he's been given it, and so you can't really complain too much, but he's been given it either way. Davies versus Barroso has been postponed. Tellez will fight Navarro December 15th. Benavidez is willing to fight Charlo. Lopez has called out Crawford. Artingstall will fight Furtado January 20th. Davis won't be moving down in weight. WBA have released a new super cruiserweight division. I thought that was just so unnecessary, so pointless, and the only thing that's going to do is possibly just make things harder to make fights, because I mean it's a weight category which I believe Wilder's made in his last few fights, and so to have that as a weight class now, does that mean that technically the Parker Wilder fight shouldn't be going ahead because they're in different weights, or is there now having to be catch weights for that, or what? But it's a bit strange, but you know, it's a thing now. Davis versus Barroso set for January 6th. KSI's appeal over his loss versus Fury has been rejected by the PBA. Cruz versus Straffen and Bridges versus Yoshida will fight December 9th. Morel Jr. versus Agbeko. Colbert versus Valenzuela. Sims Jr. versus Santiago, and Martinez versus Cordova will fight to December 16th. Pulev will fight Warizik December 14th. Ryder will fight Munguia January 27th. That's a big fight. That's an interesting fight. I'm glad, to be fair, that it's getting made. It's Ryder getting another big fight and Munguia kind of getting now to a world level opposition. And does that mean that now Canelo doesn't really have another option bar to fight Benavidez? You kind of have to think so. So hopefully that will now open up that to happen. But we'll have to wait and see. Nobody's really, Canelo, Benavidez haven't really said anything too much about that happening yet. But hopefully that will be the case. But still, I like the fight that's got made here as well. Kadua won via points versus Barroza. Ali won via points versus Mosquera. Khan won via points versus Caicedo. Barney Smith won via TKO in round 3 versus Velasco. Itoma won via TKO in round 1 versus Bolos. Berardi won via TKO in round 1 versus Duffus. Chapman won via unanimous decision versus Sedalakova to remain WBC International Featherweight Champion. Noakes won via TKO in round 4 versus Perez to remain WBC International Silver Lightweight Champion. Strand won via unanimous decision versus John to become WBO European Super Bantamweight Champion. Gwyn won via stoppage in round 8 versus Marsili to become EBU European Lightweight Champion. Just to speak a few bits on that card, it was an interesting card. So obviously, Noakes got a good stoppage victory. It was one which was a hard fought one, but I mean, it was strange what was going on with his opponent, just constantly going down. Obviously, he managed to get a victory, and it's a scrappy fight, and you have to go through them types of fights. But he still managed to do quite well, and still managed to, of course, get the win. And he was relatively accurate with his work in the process, and did consistently land relatively big shots. But Perez, it was just strange that he kept going down over and over again. Strand, he was dominant, but unfortunate for John. Of course, we had him on the channel a while ago. But of course, we wish everybody on the channel the best of luck. But obviously not for that fight. And fair play to Strand, he did box very well. Gwyn, I mean, it was an interesting stoppage as well. Marsili, I didn't really expect that from him. The way that he fought in general was very impressive. And for the older guy to be coming and pushing the pressure and, well, letting his hands go as much as he was, fair play to him. But obviously he got a shoulder injury and then had to pull out. To an extent, I feel like stuff like that, when that's happening, obviously it's neither of the fighters' really fault. So surely at that point it should just go to the judges' scorecards, whatever that is, at that point in time, because it was later on in the fight, it was the 8th round, and they shouldn't just give Gwyn the victory. I don't know, I feel like that should have been the case. Obviously I've seen it happen before. I don't really know why that wasn't the case, but either way, Gwyn, now a champion. Do I think he could beat anybody higher level? Not really. Do I think he best defend this a good couple times? Yes. I don't know if he could, if he fights another domestic lad, or if he fights a tougher European lad, then he could definitely find some trouble. It wasn't an amazing performance from him, but of course he managed to get a win, and he did look comfortable at times and did improve throughout. And if it went to a judges' scorecards, I'm not saying that Gwyn wouldn't have lost, but it just possibly could have been interesting to see what would have happened. But obviously Gwyn still managed to get the win, so congrats to him. Smith drew versus Tapfuma. That was an interesting fight too, lads. I've interviewed on this channel. Smith, I mean, it's a draw. It's not the best for him, but it's not a loss, and so he can definitely come back from that. Tapfuma, as of recent, Tapfuma, he's been doing well, and so fair play to him as well, and that's a big result for him. Khan won via points versus Lopez. Naseeb won via points versus Pollard. Birchie won via points versus Caseda. Ahmed won via points versus Aftab. Towood won via KO in round 2 versus Rubino. Lowe won via TK in round 1 versus Oliveira. Rennie won via points versus Moorcroft. Congrats to Rennie. Big victory for him. Marinette won via points versus Gorman. That was quite a surprising defeat, but Gorman wasn't conditioned that well. Watson won via unanimous decision versus Lalemon to become EBU European Flyweight Champion. Congrats to Watson. Moving on, Lopez won via points versus Castro. Carrillo won via TK in round 6 versus Berujet. Samaki won via TK in round 1 versus Moran. Perez won via TK in round 5 versus Reznicek. Pratt won via unanimous decision versus Blanco. Jikitov won via stoppage in round 1 versus Marcano. Umiha won via unanimous decision versus Napoles. Lele Saggio won via TK in round 4 versus Buonadrigo to remain WBO Intercontinental Super Middleweight Champion. Adams won via KO in round 2 versus Campton. Cox won via unanimous decision versus Vaca. Daniels won via majority decision versus Robinson to become IBF World Light Heavyweight Champion. Pampillon won via TK in round 1 versus Luna. Motu won via unanimous decision versus Mera to remain IBO World Super Bantamweight Champion. Got that one right. Also got the Daniels one right. Unfortunately, haven't been able to find any tape on either of them two fights, so I can't really comment too much, but got them both right. hopefully now Motu, like I mentioned in my prediction, is moving on to bigger and better things now and fighting now tougher opponents, hopefully. Marquez won via unanimous decision versus Rivera. Bailey won via TKO round 3 versus Gutierrez to become WBC Youth Welterweight Champion. Bailey won via TKO round 3 versus Gutierrez to become Bailey won via majority decision versus Warren. Raskin won via majority decision versus Ellis. Hackett won via TKO round 3 versus Gutierrez to become WBC Youth World Welterweight Champion. Gomez won via unanimous decision versus Correa. Buttigieg won via TKO round 1 versus Oliveira. Hughes drew versus Farrell. We had Hughes on the channel a little while ago, but yes, again, a draw isn't a loss. It was a tough lad that he was against, and on a big stage as well. And hopefully you get to see a rematch. To be honest, that was a good fight. Vuong won by a TKO round 4 versus Dufek. Quinn won by a point versus Emilov. McComb won by a unanimous decision versus Maxwell to remain WBO European Super Lightweight Champion. I spoke to Maxwell on the past. It wasn't a great fight for him, to be completely honest. I think he might have retired afterwards. I don't know for certain, so I didn't put it in, but I think he might have. And to be fair, I don't really hate that. It wasn't really the best of performances, and certain fighters and everybody at time, you just kind of got to accept when your time has come, and I think that was his time, to be honest. But McComb boxed well, to be fair to him. Crocker won via unanimous decision versus McKenna. That was a great fight. McKenna is got balls of steel, can take a punch like anybody, better than anybody, and took a lot of punches, took a lot of punishment. But Crocker was dishing it out, heavy-handed, good combinations, constantly letting his hands go. Wasn't really deterred by that of McKenna really not getting knocked down by any of them, and stayed disciplined and controlled and confident the whole time, and got the clear victory. Ajarko won via split decision versus Williamson. Gill won via TKO round 7 versus Conlon. That was what everybody was surprised that was happening. That was the shock of the weekend, if you call it that. And yeah, everybody wrote off Gill. Everybody thought Conlon had it, and I mean, myself included, I got the prediction wrong. And fair play to Gill. He showed immense heart and gave it all, and nobody really expected that he'd be able to do that. And everybody thought maybe his heart had gone, his punch resistance has gone, and he didn't really have anything left to offer. But he did, and he offered a lot. And Conlon, he's the one that's probably not got it the same as what he used to be. He's the one that has seemed to struggle more from the defeats, and his punch resistance is gone. And it seems like there was nothing there, and Gill did very well and really capitalised on it, and I think it was a good stoppage. I think Conlon could have been stopped earlier. Every punch he was getting through, it seemed like Conlon was getting hurt, and fair play to Gill. I don't know if he'd be able to, I mean, there's talks of him fighting for world titles. I don't know if you can really push it that far. There were still little bits which I still wasn't a massive fan of, but for the moment, the story, everything he was saying afterwards was very inspirational, very motivational, and was just a very good story, and that's what you like to see in the sport. And yeah, it's fair play to him. Like I said, I don't want to dishearten him or dishearten the win, take it away from him, but I don't know if he could possibly go on to fight world champions and beat them at the moment. But of course, you never know. I think he probably is going to have 1 or 2 more fights at this level before he moves up, but this was a good matchup for him. But now I'd like to see him against more of a power puncher and see if he can take a punch now, and if he is willing to. And that's what I'm interested in now, because we always knew Conlon wouldn't be doing that, and he wasn't. And Conlon, I think he could retire now, and I don't feel like anybody would have a problem with that, which is of a shame, because he's a legend of the sport. But you know, when your time has come, your time has come. I don't know if he will or not, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, Fulgham won via TKO round 2 versus Hill. Schofield won via TKO round 1 versus Torres. Mosley Jr. won via stoppage round 6 versus Conley. Garcia won via KO in round 8 versus Duarte. Another prediction that I got wrong. Fair play to Garcia. He did show more than I thought he would. He was moving around well, especially early on. He was hitting his shots nice. He was countering well. He was using them quick hands and quick feet, and looked confident. And that was what I was always wondering. Of course, him coming off the big defeat, he did slow down a bit. Duarte didn't really offer much in the way of the attacking presence. He was there in front of him, but he wasn't really throwing much. And I suppose fair play to Garcia for kind of pushing that away and making him not really want to commit or not really want to throw because he was fearful of what might have come back. And when he eventually did, Garcia caught him well, finished the fight well. It was a good stoppage, but he was giving away rounds. Garcia, I think himself, was becoming a bit tentative and a bit reluctant to throw. I think they both were at the point near stoppage, and so I think Garcia did well to get the stoppage when he did, because if that had gone the whole distance, and you never know what might have happened. But Garcia back to winning ways. That's going to do him the world of good, world of confidence. Good. If he needs that. I mean, I wasn't really a massive fan of what he was saying in the press conference afterwards about kind of Slate and Davis to an extent, and saying that he was more scared about Duarte than Davis and trying to take away Davis's power and stuff like that. I wasn't really a massive fan of that, but I suppose to an extent that hypes up fights. He wants to fight Stevenson. Willie, I don't know. He's wants to also probably fight O'Hara Davis as well. Willie, I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. For the moment, I wouldn't mind seeing him in another fight which is like a similar opponent to this, maybe a bit better, maybe a top contender, but I don't know if he could go straight into a world title after this. And then the final bit of boxing news, McKenna has retired, which is, I mean, all credit to him after his last fight. Moving on to the MMA news now. Aoki will fight Northcutt January 28th. Tolidze will fight Imavov February 3rd. Perry won by stoppage round 2 versus Alvarez. Another clear stoppage by Perry. It was an interesting performance. I mean, he looked comfortable, he looked dominant, and it's just he is slowing down a bit. He hasn't really got much of a technique, as I've always mentioned, but he's still managing to get wins and still managing to just outdog over opponents, and so credit to him for being able to do that. He's just made for this BKFC stuff, and I don't feel like many of these guys coming into it, these UFC guys, are used to taking punishment like this. And you got to remember, it's bare knuckle, like it's gonna hurt 10 times more. But Perry can always seem to take the punch, and it will be interesting to see if there is ever a day where you just can't take the punch quite the same. But we'll have to wait and see if that's ever the case. I don't know. But he did call out Pettis. I said in the prediction, Pettis would make a good fight. That would make a good fight, and hopefully we get to see that next. Because I think what he's doing with these UFC fighters, like I mentioned in my prediction, is great. Like, it is really selling the sport and bringing more eyes to the sport. And I think if Perry does go into against any of the other well-trained, well-conditioned, used to BKFC fighters, then he'd probably just lose anyway. But like I said, for the moment, this is entertainment. Macedo won via decision versus Horth. Gudem won by submission round 2 versus Turman. Belotto won via KO in round 2 versus Potieria. Close won via KO in round 1 versus Solecki. Brundage won via KO in round 1 versus Reese. Tate won via submission in round 3 versus Avila. Stolezvus won via submission in round 2 versus Soriano. Silva won via decision versus Gaida. Brady won via submission in round 3 versus Gastelum. Figueiredo won via decision versus Font. Turner won via KO in round 1 versus Green. Sarukian won via KO in round 1 versus Dariush. And I mean, that was a great card. I probably should have done a prediction for the card. In general, it was a great card. To see, I mean, what Tate coming back to winning ways, that was nice. To see Brady getting a very good submission victory. People were booing it. I don't know why you were booing it. That was a very good submission victory. That was complete domination. And against somebody like Gastelum, not many people can dominate and have dominated them like that on the ground. And was just clear on the ground. And so that was really impressive. Figueiredo, good to see him moving up in weight and still looking good. He still looked heavy-handed moving up in weight for being that of a used to flyweight, and so that was interesting. That was impressive. And I don't really know how much is left for Font now. Turner, that was a horrible stoppage. Everybody was talking about that. The ref could have jumped in 50 times and nobody would have complained. Green was getting bashed and he waited way too long, the ref. That was horrible. You don't want to see that at all. Turner, in fair play to him, he picked the shot well. He did what he had to do. You can't discredit him for the stoppage, but it's the ref. You got to be jumping him now, and he didn't until late. And I mean, it could have gone really bad if he didn't do it. If he'd waited like another punch, but he still managed to get the victory. Sarukian, though, that was a great stoppage, a great punch, and a great combination to an extent. The way that he hit the knee, and then before his foot was even on the ground, to then hit a power punch over was just, I don't know where he got the power from, but it shows his physical power, and to do something like that to Dariush, that's very impressive as well. KO in round 1, That's going to shoot him into the top 5 rankings. He's calling out Makachev. I don't think that's the fight that should happen right yet, but he's right up there with him, and there's fights available to him now, and hopefully he's going to get more and more big fights. And to see where he's come from the defeat earlier on in his UFC career to now rebuilding and getting back and getting that big stoppage, it's showing his impressive talent and commitment to the sport. And that was a very impressive stoppage, and I'm sure there's more to see for him from him moving forwards. And then the final bit of news: Moreno will fight Albazi February 24th. And yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like if you did need like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.